Racist cops shoot black woman during traffic stop. Didn't know she was a U.S. Army colonel. The shot cracked through the late afternoon air like a firecracker. A sharp, searing pain sliced through Alexis Monroe's right shoulder as she fell against the door of her SUV. Blood bloomed on her white blouse, staining it crimson. Her hands had been up, clearly visible. She had said, "I'm complying." And still, they pulled the trigger. "Ma'am, don't move, stay down," one of the officers barked, gun still pointed at her. Alexis winced as she collapsed to the ground, her legs giving way. Her breath came short and fast. She could hear her 14-year-old daughter, Layla, screaming from the passenger seat. "You shot my mom. You shot her. Why? She didn't do anything." Another officer yanked the car door open and grabbed Layla's arm, trying to drag her out. "Get out of the vehicle now." "Don't touch her," Alexis tried to yell, but her voice was thin, nearly drowned by the sirens and shouts now surrounding her. "I got a purse in the front," one officer muttered, "and some kind of military-looking badge." "Is she carrying?" another asked. "She didn't reach for anything. She was just asking why she was stopped," Layla shrieked. "She told you she was a veteran. You shot her anyway." The older officer hesitated, glancing at the documents spilled across the passenger seat. A Department of Defense ID lay face up, stamped with the eagle crest of the U.S. Army. Below it, Colonel Alexis Monroe. "Wait," the cop with the gun lowered it slowly. "Oh no." "She's military?" another whispered. The tension shifted instantly, like cold water dousing a fire. Panic flickered across the officers' faces. "She's an Army colonel," Layla said shakily, her voice cracking. "And you just shot her. For a traffic stop." The moment stretched, silent and suffocating. 6 hours earlier, Alexis had been driving along Highway 67, heading toward her mother's farmhouse in rural Texas. No uniform, no insignia, no privilege. Just a navy blue blouse, jeans, and her hair tied up in a neat bun. After years of deployments, medals, and training soldiers how to handle high-stress combat situations, this was supposed to be a peaceful weekend. "Can we get milkshakes?" Layla asked, leaning forward from the back seat. "First thing tomorrow," Alexis smiled. "Let Grandma spoil us with dinner tonight." Her phone buzzed in the cup holder, a message from command. She ignored it. For once, she wasn't Colonel Monroe. She was just Mom. She didn't even realize the police SUV behind her until its lights flashed. She signaled, pulled over, turned off the engine. Then everything unraveled. 2 patrolmen approached, both white, both tense. Alexis rolled down her window halfway and smiled. "Afternoon, officers, is there a problem?" "No smiling," one barked. "License and registration. Keep your hands visible." Alexis did as told. "Just curious, may I ask what I was stopped for?" "You were swerving." The second officer leaned in, his eyes scanning the car's interior. "I wasn't," Alexis replied calmly. "But okay." Layla began recording on her phone, whispering to herself, "Just in case." "You military?" one of them asked suddenly, spotting the dog tags hanging from the rearview mirror. "Yes, on leave." "Step out of the vehicle." "Excuse me?" "Now." Alexis looked at him directly. "I don't consent to a search. I haven't done anything wrong. I'm happy to cooperate, but I'd like to know why." Gun drawn. It happened fast. "Stop resisting." "I'm not." The shot fired before the sentence ended. Now Alexis lay in the ER, conscious but quiet. Her shoulder had been patched. Painkillers dulled the sharpness, but not the sting of betrayal. Across the hallway, Rick Landon, the precinct captain, was pacing. The 2 officers stood nearby, pale-faced and silent. "You shot a damn colonel," Landon hissed. "Do you know what you've done?" "She didn't say who she was," one said weakly. "She didn't have to," Landon snapped. "DOD's already calling. This is going federal. Congratulations, you've ignited a firestorm." Landon turned toward the window where Alexis sat, back straight, face unreadable. She didn't speak as he entered. "Colonel Monroe," he said carefully, we're sorry. It was a mistake. A Horrible miscommunication. She turned her gaze toward him, icy and calm. A miscommunication. You didn't identify yourself. I didn't think I needed to. Landon cleared his throat. Look, we'll make this right. We'll release a statement. Don't bother. What? I'm not here for statements. She leaned in. I'm here to make sure this doesn't happen to another black woman, or a child, or anyone. Landon's jaw tightened. Are you threatening the department? I'm informing you, she said coldly. I'm still active duty. I still have the ear of senior command, and I still believe in justice. Real justice. Outside the hospital room, Layla sat beside Jordan Ellis, the young lawyer who had shown up after seeing the viral video. He watched the footage on Layla's phone again, lips pressed in a hard line. This is bad, he muttered. They're already trying to spin the narrative. But we have this. Layla looked up. Are they going to try to silence her? They might, he said, but they'll have to get through us first. Alexis emerged from the room, arm in a sling, and paused beside them. We go public, she said firmly. No negotiations, no backdoor apologies. We hold them accountable. Jordan nodded. Layla whispered, let's make them wish they never pulled that trigger. And just like that, the battle line was drawn. Not with rage, but with resolve. Not with chaos, but with clarity. They had shot the wrong woman. And now she was coming for them. The footage was only 23 seconds long, but by the time it hit social media that night, it had already spread to every major news outlet. Layla's trembling hands had caught it all. The flashing blue lights, the panicked shouts, and the exact moment her mother was shot while calmly raising her hands. The video opened with her mother's voice, measured, professional. Officer, I am complying. My hands are up. Then chaos, the shot, the scream. By midnight, the clip had racked up nearly 3 million views on Twitter. By morning, it was national news. Jordan Ellis sat alone in his tiny one-bedroom apartment, watching the footage on repeat. 28, fresh out of a public interest law fellowship, and already neck-deep in civil rights cases. He felt his stomach churn with each replay. This wasn't just a lawsuit waiting to happen. This was a war. He picked up the phone and dialed the number Alexis had given him in the hospital hallway. Layla answered. Her voice was hoarse. Hello? Hey. It's Jordan. I just wanted to check in. How's your mom? She's sleeping now, Layla whispered. She barely said 2 words since she got home, but I can tell she's not resting. She's probably strategizing. Layla let out a small breath. Yeah, probably. She's not alone in this, Jordan said. Neither are you. We've got civil rights orgs already reaching out. They want to help. Media's starting to ask questions. Layla paused. Are they saying bad things about her? Jordan hesitated. Some are. The usual corners. She didn't comply. Why didn't she identify herself? Maybe she reached for something. But the video speaks for itself, and we're going to make sure the truth stays louder. There was silence on the line, then Layla said quietly, I was just scared they were going to kill her. And me. I know, Jordan said, but you were brave. That video, you changed everything. Across town at the Ridgeview Police Department, Captain Landon wasn't sleeping either. He stood in the break room, staring at the frozen frame on the TV mounted above the coffee machine, Alexis Monroe collapsing against the SUV, blood blooming at her shoulder. This isn't going away, said Internal Affairs Officer Denise Hart, arms folded tightly. The clip's viral, and she's a colonel. You know what that means? It means we're screwed, Landon muttered. She's got the Pentagon watching. You think they'll let this slide? Landon ran a hand through his thinning hair. We need to get ahead of it. Issue a statement. Frame it as an unfortunate error. Hart raised an eyebrow. An error? You know what I mean. No, Captain, I really don't. Because this isn't a parking ticket. They shot a decorated officer, off duty, unarmed. I get it, Landon snapped. But this department doesn't survive if we let that narrative dominate. You're thinking about optics. I'm thinking about consequences. Back at the Monroe house, Alexis sat alone in the living room. Her arm still in a sling, a soft blanket draped over her lap. She stared at the blank television screen like it held a secret only she could unlock. Her phone buzzed on the table, a text from a number she hadn't seen in years. LT Jen Vasquez saw the video. You ready to bring the fire? Alexis stared at it for a long beat, then typed back, Yes, but this time I'm not doing it in uniform. I'm doing it as a mother. Just then, Layla padded into the room holding her tablet. Mom? You're trending. Alexis blinked. What? Justice for Colonel Monroe. It's everywhere. Layla showed her the tablet. Tweets, videos, interviews, veterans posting their support, black mothers sharing stories, journalists tagging the Department of Justice, celebrities retweeting the clip with fire emojis and calls for accountability. Alexis didn't smile, but her eyes lit with something else. Purpose. She took the tablet, scrolled for a moment, then looked up at her daughter. I don't want you to be proud of me because I wore a uniform. I want you to be proud because I didn't stay silent when I took it off. Layla nodded, her voice barely above a whisper. I already am. At that moment, Jordan arrived. As Alexis opened the door, he held up a folder thick with legal briefs, affidavits, and preliminary filings. I drafted a motion, he said, to demand the body cam footage. They're withholding it. Alexis took the folder, flipping through the pages. They think this will blow over, he continued, that you'll settle quietly. They don't know me very well, she said, shutting the door behind him. They're going to learn, Jordan said. Alexis looked at him. Not just them. Everyone. I'm not doing this for revenge. I'm doing this so the next woman they pull over isn't met with bullets, but respect. Jordan met her eyes. Then let's show them what real justice looks like, Giselle. And in that quiet living room with paperwork scattered and pain still fresh, a storm began to form. Not just of anger, but of clarity, precision, and power. One that wouldn't just break the silence, but rewrite the story. The mayor's press conference was supposed to be routine. A short statement, some deflection, maybe even a half-hearted apology. But when Mayor Evelyn Carter took the podium that afternoon, flanked by stiff-faced city council members, the crowd didn't fall silent as expected. Instead, they pressed forward, voices rising, cameras flashing, and chants growing louder. Release the body cam footage. Justice for Colonel Monroe. In the back of the crowd, Layla stood with Jordan, her hand tightly clenched around a copy of the cease and desist letter someone had anonymously slipped under their door that morning. A threat, a warning, but also, to her, a challenge. Mayor Carter raised her hand for silence. We understand the concern and grief caused by the recent incident involving Colonel Alexis Monroe. An internal investigation is underway. We ask for patience while we gather the facts. A woman in the crowd shouted, We saw the facts. They're bleeding on Twitter. Others joined in, echoing the outrage. Someone tossed a printed photo into the air, a still from the viral clip. Alexis's hands up, her face composed, milliseconds before the shot. Inside the press tent, Alexis watched from a wheelchair. She'd insisted on coming, against doctor's orders. Her left shoulder throbbed, wrapped tightly beneath her blouse, but she barely noticed the pain. Her eyes were locked on Carter's face, analyzing every word, every pause. She's spinning, Alexis muttered to herself. She's already distancing the department. Beside her, Jordan leaned closer. We have leverage now. The Pentagon issued a quiet inquiry this morning. They're asking questions. Trust me, the mayor's sweating under that smile. Layla sat on Alexis's other side, holding her mother's hand. You sure you're ready for this? I've been ready since the moment they pulled that trigger. Later that evening, a knock came at their door. Layla opened it and found a man in a navy blue suit, silver hair slicked back, sharp blue eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Ms. Monroe?" he asked with a faint smile. Alexis stepped forward. "Yes? I'm Gregory Shaw, U.S. Army Legal Affairs. I've been assigned to assist, unofficially, for now." Alexis exchanged a glance with Jordan. "They're watching this closely?" Shaw nodded. "Too closely for some. Brass doesn't like bad press, especially when it involves a decorated colonel. They're hoping this can be resolved quietly." "You mean swept under the rug?" Alexis said flatly. "Let's just say they're weighing options, and they want to know if you intend to go public with your full record." Alexis narrowed her eyes. "I risked my life for this country for 2 decades. If I have to risk my reputation to fix what's broken here, so be it." That night, Layla sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through old family photos. One in particular caught her attention. Alexis in uniform, kneeling beside a young girl in braids, pinning a junior ROTC badge to her shirt. It was Layla, 7 years old, eyes beaming. "Mom?" she asked softly, approaching her with the photo. "Do you remember this day?" Alexis looked up and her face softened. "Yeah, that was the day you told me you wanted to be a lawyer. You said I could be anything. I still mean it." Layla looked down. "Then help me understand something. Why didn't you tell them who you were when they stopped you?" Alexis exhaled slowly. "Because I shouldn't have to. Because being a colonel shouldn't be what saves me. Being human should be enough." Silence filled the room. Then Layla whispered, "Then let's make it enough. Let's make it matter." The next morning, Alexis appeared on national television, dressed in civilian clothes. Arm in a sling, eye steady, she sat across from journalist Maya Raines, who wasted no time. "Colonel Monroe, thank you for being here. The nation has seen the video, they've heard your name, but most people still don't know what happened before the camera rolled. Can you tell us?" Alexis nodded. "I was on my way to pick up my daughter from school. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't weaving. They said I looked suspicious. When I asked why, they told me to step out of the vehicle. I asked for a supervisor. That's when things escalated. And you've seen the rest. Why didn't you reveal your military status at the stop?" "I didn't think I had to justify my existence. My uniform doesn't make me more deserving of safety. My humanity does." The audience fell quiet. Maya leaned forward. "What do you want now?" Alexis's eyes locked on the camera. "Accountability. Reform. And for every mother, every daughter, every soldier who doesn't make headlines, I want this to stop. I want them to stop fearing the people sworn to protect them." When the interview aired, the world listened. But so did the officers who had pulled that trigger. And behind closed doors, they were already preparing their next move. What they didn't know, what they would learn far too late, was that Alexis wasn't just fighting back. She was leading a movement. The courtroom was silent except for the hum of fluorescent lights overhead and the subtle clicks of reporters' keyboards. Alexis sat at the plaintiff's table with her legal team, her posture upright, chin high, despite the sling still supporting her healing shoulder. Her lawyer, Samuel Brooks, was a former JAG officer turned civil rights attorney, and he looked like a storm barely contained in a suit. Across the room, Officers Tate and Reynolds sat with their department attorney, stiff and pale. They had yet to make eye contact with Alexis since the proceedings began. Judge Marianne Delgado, a woman known for her no-nonsense demeanor, entered the room and took her seat with a curt nod. "We are here today regarding the civil action filed by Colonel Alexis Monroe against the Crescent City Police Department and Officers Peter Tate and Marcus Reynolds," she announced. "Proceed, Mr. Brooks." Samuel stood, buttoned his coat slowly, and walked to the center of the room. "Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen, this case is not just about a traffic stop gone wrong. It's about a system that views blackness as a threat. My client, a decorated U.S. Army colonel, was stopped, mistreated, and shot while unarmed and compliant. Her only crime that day was existing in a uniform the officers refused to see. Murmurs echoed around the courtroom. "Let me be clear," he continued, his voice sharpening. Colonel Monroe did not reveal her identity immediately, not because she was hiding anything, but because she knew she shouldn't have to. Her worth is not in her rank. Her dignity is not conditional. Then he turned to the defendants, but the officers couldn't see past their own bias. "And now we're here," the defense countered with their opening statement, filled with shaky justifications and selective memory. Officer Reynolds claimed Alexis reached quickly, despite the footage clearly showing otherwise. Officer Tate insisted they feared for their safety, though Alexis's hands were up, her voice calm. That's when Layla walked in. She'd been asked to stay home. The courtroom was no place for an 11-year-old still recovering from trauma. But she insisted. She needed to see this, to stand behind her mom, not just as a daughter, but as a witness to the truth. She slid into the front row beside Jordan, who gave her a small nod of approval. As testimony began, the prosecution played the footage again. This time, the room watched it without gasps, just silence. Alexis flinched slightly as the gunshot played. It was the sound she heard in every dream now. Then, Samuel called the first witness, Sergeant Thomas Clay, a retired officer who now trained police departments on implicit bias. "Sergeant Clay," Samuel asked, "in your expert opinion, did the officers follow proper procedure?" "No," Clay replied firmly, "not even close. They escalated a routine stop into a confrontation. They disregarded de-escalation protocols, ignored the driver's calm demeanor, and acted on assumptions, not facts." "Would your answer change if you knew the driver was a U.S. Army colonel?" Clay paused. "It shouldn't, but I know it would." As Clay stepped down, Samuel turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we request the court admit into evidence the personnel records of Officers Tate and Reynolds." The defense immediately objected, but Judge Delgado raised an eyebrow. "On what grounds?" "They're irrelevant," the defense attorney stammered. "This isn't a character trial." "This is a pattern trial," Samuel replied, "and we've discovered something the department didn't want us to see." Delgado nodded. "I'll allow it." Samuel handed over the documents. Tate had 3 prior complaints involving aggressive behavior toward black motorists. Reynolds had been investigated for falsifying reports, though cleared internally each time. The twist hung in the air like static. Reporters scribbled faster. The officers looked visibly shaken. One leaned to whisper to the other, but Tate's hand trembled so violently he dropped his pen. Outside the courthouse, the crowd was swelling again. Alexis stood behind the press line with her daughter and Jordan, watching as signs lifted into the air. One read, "Respect black women in uniform." Another, "Justice for Colonel Monroe." A news anchor spoke into the camera. Today's hearing took a dramatic turn as previously sealed records were released, painting a disturbing picture of officer conduct. Public response is growing, and pressure is mounting on both the police department and City Hall. Layla turned to her mother. "They tried to make it seem like it was your fault, but now everyone sees." Alexis smiled sadly. "Truth takes time, but when it hits hard." That evening, someone threw a brick through the window of the Monroe family's temporary home. A crude note was attached with tape. "Drop the case, or next time it's not just glass." Police responded, took a report, promised patrols. But Alexis didn't flinch. She turned to Layla after the officers left. "You still want to be a lawyer?" Layla nodded. "Then you'll need to be braver than most, but I think you already are." Back in court the next morning, a new twist emerged. A whistleblower. Detective Naomi Vance, a former internal affairs investigator, requested to testify. She arrived in plain clothes, looking nervously around the courtroom. "Detective Vance," Judge Delgado asked, Do you have something new to offer the court? Vance nodded. Yes, Your Honor. I have emails between Officers Tate and Reynolds discussing Colonel Monroe's stop. They bragged about it, said they'd put another loudmouth in her place. Samuel leaned forward. You have the emails? They tried to delete them, but they're backed up on the city server. The room erupted. Delgado pounded her gavel. Alexis's heart pounded. She looked at her daughter. For the first time since the shooting, she felt it. Not just the pain, the turn of the tide. The city was buzzing. Overnight, the leaked emails between Officers Tate and Reynolds had gone viral. News outlets from coast to coast were running with the headline, "Cops bragged about shooting Black Army Colonel." Social media exploded. Hashtag Colonel Monroe trended nationally. Protests flared up not only in Crescent City, but in Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Atlanta. But none of that compared to what was happening behind the courthouse walls. The courtroom was now standing room only. Lawyers, activists, veterans, and civilians sat shoulder to shoulder, hungry for truth. Outside, the crowd spilled onto the streets, chanting her name. Some carried signs with Alexis's military photo, others held up placards of Layla, fist raised, quoting the words she'd told a reporter the day before. "My mom didn't fight for this country to be shot by it." Inside, Alexis sat quiet but poised. She wore a plain navy blue blazer and her full array of service pins. Layla sat beside her, notebook open, jotting down every question, every name, every piece of evidence. The press had dubbed her the little lawyer. She took it seriously. Samuel Brooks opened the day's arguments with fire. "Your Honor," he said, "the public has seen enough. But today the court will see what the officers didn't want anyone to know, that this was no mistake. It was a pattern, and it was protected." He handed Judge Delgado a USB drive. "Contained here is a compilation of past traffic stops by Officers Tate and Reynolds, pulled from dashcam footage and previously unexamined by Internal Affairs." The judge leaned forward. "Are you saying the department knowingly ignored this?" "I'm saying," Samuel replied, "they buried it." The footage began. Clip after clip played across the courtroom monitors. In each, the officers used excessive force, particularly when stopping black drivers. One man was yanked from his car for asking why he was being stopped. Another, a teenage girl, was handcuffed for talking back. In every video, Tate and Reynolds appeared calm, even smug. The room was ice-cold with disgust. But then came the twist. In the final video, dated just 1 week before Alexis was shot, the officers were recorded laughing during a stop. "Did you see her face?" Reynolds chuckled. "Another one of those strong black types. Think they know the law because they watch Judge Judy." Tate laughed too. "Just gotta remind 'em who's in charge." At that moment, Judge Delgado's gavel slammed down. "That's enough. Court is in recess. Both counsel to chambers. Now." As the judge stormed out, murmurs turned into shouts. Reporters ran for the exits, phones already to their ears. In the hallway, Layla turned to her mom. "They're scared now, aren't they?" Alexis nodded. "Because they finally realize we're not alone in this." Meanwhile, in a dimly lit office inside City Hall, Police Chief Warren Bradford paced furiously. His phone buzzed non-stop, every call more urgent than the last. City Council, the mayor, even the governor. His assistant appeared in the doorway, pale. "Sir, the Department of Justice just issued a formal inquiry. They want your full internal affairs archive. Immediately." Bradford collapsed into his chair. "This is going to bury us." But that wasn't the only surprise waiting. That night, Layla came into her mother's room holding a legal pad. "I have an idea," she said. Alexis smiled, exhausted. "Okay, counselor, let's hear it. What if we didn't wait for them to apologize? What if we made them?" "How do you mean?" Layla flipped the pad around. It was a list of civilian oversight committees, legal statutes about police accountability, and the names of veteran organizations. We pushed the story. We talked to the right people, not just about us, but about everyone like us. Alexis looked at her daughter as if seeing her for the first time. You want to change the system. Layla nodded. One law at a time. The next morning, the courthouse steps became the stage for something no one expected. Alexis stood behind a podium. Reporters and civilians gathered around. She didn't read from notes. She spoke from memory and heart. I didn't join the army to wear a title. I joined to serve, to protect, and when I came home, I expected the same protection in return. But when I was shot by officers sworn to uphold the law, I realized that uniform didn't matter if they couldn't see the person in it. She paused, looked down at Layla. But I also realized something else, that my daughter, 8 years old, could see the truth when grown men refused to. Layla stepped forward, mic shaking in her hand. My mom taught me that justice doesn't start in court. It starts with us, with standing up even when you're scared. And if they don't fix the law, then we'll write new ones. The applause was thunderous. Inside, Judge Delgado signed an order for a federal review of the entire Crescent City Police Department. Tate and Reynolds were suspended without pay, pending criminal charges. But for Alexis, it wasn't about revenge. That night, at home, she received a video message from an army buddy now working in Washington. Lex, the man said, they're watching. From the Pentagon to the Hill, you've done something bigger than one court case. Alexis turned off the phone, staring out the window. It was still a long road, but for the first time in weeks, she could see the path ahead. And this time, it wasn't just hers to walk. She had a team, a community, a daughter, and now the world was watching too. The media circus outside the courthouse had become impossible to ignore. Helicopters circled above. Protesters gathered with signs that read, "Justice for Colonel Monroe" and "Stop shooting first." Still inside the courtroom, the battle was quieter, but no less fierce. Alexis sat tall at the witness table, her uniform clean, her expression composed. Beside her, Layla clutched a notepad almost as big as her. Her small hands trembled, but her gaze was steady. Across the aisle, Officers Tate and Reynolds sat stiffly in their suits. Their lawyer, Martin Kellerman, looked every bit the seasoned defense attorney. Slicked back hair, tailored suit, and an air of arrogance that filled the room. "All right," the judge said, looking up. "Let's continue with direct examination." Samuel Brooks rose. "Colonel Monroe, please tell the court what you remember from the moment the officers approached your vehicle." Alexis looked at the jury, then to the gallery filled with strangers holding their breath. She spoke clearly. "I saw them in my mirror, lights flashing. I pulled over immediately, kept my hands on the wheel. I announced I was reaching for my license, but they had already drawn their weapons. I froze. They yelled for me to get out, to get on the ground. I said I was active duty military and pregnant. They didn't care." Gasps rippled through the room. "You were pregnant?" the judge asked, eyes narrowing. "Yes, Your Honor. 4 months." Samuel stepped forward. "And what happened next?" Alexis took a breath. "I was shot, twice. Once in the shoulder, once in the side. They didn't check for ID. They didn't wait for backup. They just fired." Even Kellerman seemed rattled, flipping through papers like they could shield him from the truth. "Let the record reflect," Samuel added, "that Colonel Monroe had no criminal record, her vehicle was legally registered, and the stop was for a minor lane change." "Objection," Kellerman muttered, but it was weak. "Overruled," said the judge, glaring. Layla suddenly tugged at Alexis's sleeve and whispered in her ear. Alexis's lips curved into the faintest smile, then nodded. She raised a hand. "Permission to share something, Your Honor?" "Go ahead." Alexis turned to the court. I'd like my daughter to read something. It's a statement she wrote about what it was like to watch me bleed on the pavement." The courtroom froze. Layla stood, walked to the front with the confidence of someone 10 times her age. She cleared her throat and began reading from her paper. "I thought heroes wore capes," she said softly, "but mine wore combat boots and a baby bump. I saw the police throw her down. I screamed for them to stop. I yelled that she was a soldier. They told me to shut it or I'd be next. I thought she was going to die. I still have dreams where I'm back on that road, and I can't make them stop. I just wanted my mom to come home." Tears broke across the room like a wave. Kellerman shifted in his seat. One of the jurors wiped her eyes. Even Judge Delgado looked shaken. Samuel gave a nod of thanks, then returned to his seat. Then Kellerman stood and tried to twist it. "You're a decorated officer, Colonel Monroe. Why didn't you identify yourself more clearly?" Alexis didn't flinch. "Sir, when guns are in your face, shouting louder is not a survival tactic." He kept pressing. "You understand the officers feared for their lives." "No, I understand they feared my skin before they ever saw my face." The line hit like a punch. He opened his mouth to respond, but Alexis cut him off. "And if they feared me so much, why did they mock me in the back of the squad car while I was bleeding out?" Silence. "What mockery?" the judge asked sharply. Alexis looked at Samuel. He pulled out a small audio recorder. "Body cam audio," he said. "Suppressed from the initial investigation, just unsealed." He pressed play. Through the scratchy static, the officers' voices were unmistakable. "She said she's a colonel. Bull probably stole that uniform. Bet she forged it, or maybe it's Halloween. Doesn't matter. Bet we're heroes tomorrow." The room recoiled in horror. Samuel turned to the judge. "This isn't just excessive force. This is a hate crime. It's contempt of service. And it's a disgrace to every uniform worn with honor." Judge Delgado's gavel slammed. "We are calling an emergency evidentiary review. Jury dismissed until further notice." As the court emptied, Layla walked beside her mom. "Do you think people heard us?" Alexis wrapped her arm around her daughter. "They didn't just hear us, baby. They felt us." Outside, as news broke of the audio files, protests turned into marches. Veterans groups pledged support. The National Guard even issued a statement condemning the officers. Inside his precinct office, Chief Warren Bradford watched it unfold on TV. Then he reached for his desk phone. "Get me the city attorney," he said. "We've got to get ahead of this, now." But it was too late. Justice was already on the move, and it wasn't slowing down. The courtroom was packed. Reporters lined the back, typing feverishly, camera shutters clicking with every movement. The gallery was filled with soldiers in uniform, veterans with folded arms and hard eyes, students, mothers, and activists holding small flags or photos of Alexis Monroe in uniform. Every seat was taken, every hallway crowded. But Alexis wasn't there for a show. She sat quietly at the plaintiff's table in her dress blues, the ribbons across her chest telling their own story. Her gaze was fixed on the witness stand, where Officer Tate now sat, stiff, sweat beginning to show under his collar. His attorney, Martin Kellerman, looked calm, but his foot tapped anxiously under the table. "Officer Tate," Samuel Brooks began smoothly, "do you recognize this uniform?" He held up a framed photo. Alexis Monroe at a military ceremony, standing beside the Secretary of Defense. Tate blinked. "Yes? And you saw it that night?" Tate hesitated. I don't remember clearly." "That's strange," Samuel said, "because we have body cam footage showing you pointing at the uniform and saying, 'Looks fake as hell.' Ring any bells now?" Laughter broke out in the gallery. The judge rapped his gavel. "Order." Tate shifted in his seat. "I thought it might be a costume." "A costume," Samuel repeated, walking closer. "So your first instinct upon seeing a black woman in a military uniform wasn't to verify her ID. it was to assume it was fake. "I didn't mean—" "You meant exactly what you said, officer," Samuel cut in, "and you followed that with bullets." The room went silent. Then Samuel stepped back. "No further questions. Your Honor, we now call Dr. Melissa Chan to the stand." A woman in her 40s took the stand wearing a navy suit. "Please state your occupation." "I'm the attending ER physician at St. Vincent's Hospital. I treated Colonel Monroe the night she was brought in." "Can you describe her condition?" "She was in hypovolemic shock. One bullet wound had fractured her clavicle. Another nearly punctured her lung. She was also—" Melissa hesitated, voice cracking. "4 months pregnant. The fetus didn't survive." The silence was immediate. Alexis looked down. Layla squeezed her hand. Samuel nodded solemnly. "Thank you, doctor. No further questions." When Kellerman stood for cross, his tone was calm but cold. "Doctor, can you confirm whether the officers knew Colonel Monroe was pregnant at the time of the shooting?" "No, but they knew they had shot an unarmed woman who posed no threat." "I didn't ask for opinions, doctor." "And I'm not giving one. That's a medical fact." He sat back, rattled. Outside the courtroom, the energy had changed. Protesters now held up signs with Layla's letter on them. She wore boots and a baby bump. Clips of the body cam audio had gone viral, sparking outrage even from conservative veterans groups. Inside the police department, Chief Warren Bradford paced his office. His hands trembled as he read the letter from the city council. Effective immediately, due to new evidence and public outcry, Officers Tate and Reynolds are suspended pending full review. Internal Affairs has opened a federal civil rights investigation. He slammed the paper on his desk. "Idiots," he muttered. "You just burned this whole department down." That evening, Layla and Alexis sat on the balcony of their hotel. The city lights sparkled beyond the glass, but neither of them looked at them. "You okay, Mommy?" Layla asked, wrapping herself in her mother's arms. Alexis exhaled. "I'm tired, baby, but we're almost there." Layla nodded. "Do you think they believe you now?" Alexis looked into her daughter's eyes. "They believe you. That's why we're winning." Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Samuel opened it. "You're going to want to see this," he said, handing Alexis a laptop. The screen showed a breaking news alert. Department of Defense issues. Statement. Colonel Monroe is a decorated combat officer with 20 years of honorable service. We stand with her. Layla gasped. "Mommy, that's on every news channel." And then another voice joined in, a deep southern drawl. General Marcus Gray, live from Arlington. "Colonel Alexis Monroe represents the best of what this country has to offer. The fact that she was gunned down on American soil, not by enemies overseas, but by those sworn to protect her, is a national disgrace. We will not let this go unanswered." Alexis pressed her hand to her mouth. Her eyes shimmered, but she didn't cry. Not this time. The next day, the city council called an emergency meeting. Public trust in the police was plummeting. Lawsuits loomed. And in a closed session, a decision was made. The mayor signed an executive order stripping Officer Tate and Reynolds of their badges. Internal Affairs recommended criminal prosecution, and the department announced sweeping reforms. But inside the courtroom, none of that mattered yet, because tomorrow would be closing arguments. And Alexis knew, whatever the verdict, the real war was far from over. But now, at least, she wasn't fighting it alone. The courtroom was hushed as the jury filed in. 12 ordinary citizens, now burdened with deciding the fate of an institution, not just 2 officers. Every eye in the room followed them as they took their seats. The judge cleared his throat. "Madam Foreperson, has the jury reached a unanimous verdict?" The woman stood, her voice steady but resolute. "We have, Your Honor." She handed the envelope to the bailiff, who delivered it to the bench. The judge read silently, his expression giving nothing away. In the case of Monroe v. Tate and Reynolds, on the charge of use of excessive force resulting in bodily harm, we find the defendants guilty. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Layla covered her mouth, tears spilling as she turned to her mother. Alexis didn't smile. She simply nodded once, lips tight like a soldier acknowledging a mission completed. But the forewoman wasn't done. On the charge of racial profiling and malicious intent during a lawful traffic stop, guilty. The gallery erupted. Applause, sobs, the crackle of emotion burst forth like a dam giving way. The judge hammered his gavel, but even he looked relieved. Officer Tate lowered his head, shoulders slumped. Reynolds just stared blankly at the floor, as if the words hadn't landed. Outside the courthouse, hundreds had gathered. The news cameras lit up like spotlights on a stage. Chants of "Justice for Monroe" echoed down the block. But Alexis had one more thing to say. She stepped up to the podium after the trial, flanked by Samuel and Layla. "I want to thank the jury. I want to thank my attorney. I want to thank everyone who showed up and believed in the truth when it wasn't easy. But today isn't just about me." She looked down at Layla, then up at the crowd. "This is about the next black woman driving home in her uniform, the next black man walking his dog, the next child who speaks truth and isn't heard. I survived. Many didn't. Let's change that." The crowd erupted in applause, but Alexis held up her hand. There was more. "To those who say justice has been served, I say this. Justice isn't a verdict. It's a promise. One we have to fight for every day." Back at home weeks later, Alexis opened the front door to find a package on her porch. Inside was a framed letter from the Department of Defense, officially reinstating her with full honors, plus a bronze plaque bearing her new rank, Colonel First Class. Next to it was a handwritten note. "We were late to speak, but now we stand with you. Forever. General Marcus Gray." In her living room, Layla was sprawled out with books, talking on a video call with classmates from across the country. A teacher had invited her to speak on a civics panel about civil rights and justice. Layla, with her usual poise, explained the case like a seasoned advocate. "She's 8, Alexis whispered to herself, "and she's already a force of nature." That night, Alexis lit a candle for the child she'd lost. She placed the flame next to the medals on her mantle, not as a symbol of war, but as a reminder that every battle for dignity was worth it. The final image was this: Alexis and Layla walking hand in hand through the Veterans Memorial Garden, their silhouettes framed by a rising sun. Justice had been delayed but not denied, and their story of strength, truth, and an 8-year-old who changed the course of a courtroom was now being taught in schools across the country. To our viewers, if this story moved you, share it. Let the world know that truth matters, no matter how small the voice. Subscribe to the channel, support stories that expose injustice, and uplift the heroes among us. Because every voice counts, especially the ones that refuse to stay silent. This is more than a story. It's a reminder, a promise, and a call to action.